We are smack dab in the middle of work week. It is Wednesday, it is hump day, and it is time to talk some college football, of course, because you're watching Gold and Blue, and that's basically all we do around here. On a side note, I will say this. I'm in a pretty good mood right now because West Virginia basketball is looking pretty stinking good right now. We beat a pretty good ranked Auburn at home. We went on the road. We lost to a top 15 TCU, but played them pretty tough. And then we come back home, absolutely blast Oklahoma on Saturday. And then tonight, almost a top 10 win at home. Number 11, Iowa State goes down to West Virginia. So our record moves to 15-9. I think we're all but locked into the big dance. So I'm pretty excited about that. However, 2 back-to-back road trips. And if you look at the standings of the Big 12 in college basketball, everybody's road standings, the way they play on the road, not very good. Everybody's trash on the road because it's tough in the Big 12. So hopefully we can at least split that. So I'm in a good mood is the bottom line. How are you doing, Tide Guy?
I'm doing great. As you're talking basketball right now, Alabama's stomping Florida 50-21.
Man, I'm telling you, man. Alabama needs to let somebody else be good in sports, man, because y'all have football basically wrapped up, and now all of a sudden you're really good in basketball. That's not fair, man.
Yeah, we finally got a coach.
Not fair. Not fair at all. So it's really, even though most Alabama fans don't care about basketball, it's nice to have that to fall back on. It's not, okay, football's over with, so we suck in basketball, so I'm not worried about it. Now you can actually care a little bit about basketball.
Yeah, now we got somebody to root for now come March.
There you go. Exactly. Quick reminder, everybody, please hit the like button. Even if you're watching the replay of this, it still helps the video hit the YouTube algorithm. And if you have a question for me or my guest or a comment or a troll attempt, if you want to make fun of me, best way to get our attention and everybody's attention, actually, is hit the super chat button. It is the little dollar sign that you see on the bottom right-hand corner. Anything you put in that super chat will go on the screen and will be read out loud. And, of course, it helps the show. I'm telling you, I've said this many, many times. Us YouTube channels, us college football YouTube channels, we always appreciate those super chats. But in the offseason, we appreciate them just a little bit more because it does get tough in the offseason. College football fans lose interest. So those donations really, really hit the show, and we really, really appreciate it. So Tide Guy came on the live show. When was it? Last Friday, I believe, when we talked about Pac-12.
It was Saturday night when we
Saturday
had that.
Night. That's right. We talked about Pac-12 because during the week it was all doom and gloom. Arizona State was thinking about leaving the Pac-12 and bringing on, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, 4 corners, and the Pac-12, pretty much done it all with. You come on the show and you say, "Hold on, go to Blue Dude." That's not what I heard. What I heard was that the Pac-12 either has or is close to having a TV deal with ESPN. Not a great one, but still locked in. And is looking to get SMU and San Diego State. And so right. I did some videos, and those videos hit pretty hard. And today, George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, did make an official visit to SMU. So I'm hearing SMU, the visit today, they're locking in San Diego State because they're trying to, soften the blow from losing USC and UCLA, so that Southern California market. And I've heard, not like intense conversations, but brief, I believe is the word I heard, brief conversations with Fresno State. So is the Pac-12 stabilizing? Is that what we can take out of all of this?
I think it is. And the Pac-12 has also I don't exactly remember the word they used, informal or just small little meetings with Fresno State. So, I mean, Fresno State's putting it out there that they're interested. The Pac-12 is kind of gauging, what it would mean. I think what the Pac-12 is doing right now, and you haven't seen the media rights signed yet, is I think they're kind of gauging on, okay, this is what our deal is worth with the 10 members we currently have. But now if we add San Diego State, SMU, what is it worth? And I think the numbers that they heard would be better adding 2 more people. Okay. Because ESPN needs content. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. I know a lot of people might not seem to watch Pac-12 after dark, But you know what? It's an hour that
Something.
ESPN needs. They need that programming. So I think by adding SMU and San Diego State, it'll give more content. So ESPN is interested in that. So I truly think that the Pac-12 will stop at 12 for right now. I think they'll take them, but I think they are going to be talking to teams like Fresno State. They might even reach out to a few others, Tulane and a few others, just to see what the interest for the next go around. Because we all know that, there's probably 10 years down the road going to be another go around.
Do you think they would have any interest whatsoever in Memphis?
Memphis wouldn't be a bad school. I mean, the thing with Memphis is it's a decent football program. I mean, they've had some really good teams and then they've had some bad teams. But I think if you look at them over the last 10 to 20 years, you would say they're an average team. More than likely a winning record. I don't have it in front of me, but I would think, most years they're above 500. And they're a good basketball program.
Absolutely. And they have FedEx for the backer. To
Exactly.
me, if you look at a map, if the Pac-12 grabs SMU and then sneaks a little further east to Tulane and then sneaks a little further east to Memphis, that makes sense. If it was just getting Memphis, then that wouldn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right.
But if it's, SMU, then Tulane, then Memphis, then you have dots to connect, and it makes it make a little bit more sense. So I could see that. The only thing that I maybe think that the Pac-12 would be hesitant with Memphis would be the academics. They're not a good academic school. That might be the one thing that would keep them out. So having said that, so let's just say for the moment that the Pac-12 is stabilized. There's no heat on them, so the heat is shifting over to the Big 12 and the ACC. And some people think that the grant of rights for the ACC are ironclad. There's no way that any team is getting out of it. There's just no way. They're locked in until 2036. I'm not one of those people. I think there's two ways. The first way, $500 million. I know it's crazy. Nobody's going to do that, but it is a way. I mean, If we're going to get technical, that is a way. The other way is the 8 votes needed to be the majority to at least put heat on ESPN and either dissolve the grant of rights or get them fixed. And if you open the door, if you crease it just a little bit, those ACC brands will knock it down, especially the North Carolina schools. If you're an ACC fan and you don't think that the North Carolina schools control the ACC, then you're really not familiar with the ACC. Not at all. The North Carolina schools definitely control the ACC. And if they put heat on ESPN and the ACC, things will get done. Here's where I start thinking about things, because I've said it several times. If I were the ACC commissioner, I would get ESPN back to the negotiating table and I'd say, here's what we need to do. Let's chop these grant of rights in half. Let's say 2030 or 2031, but at the same time, increase the revenue. We get more money, but it shortens the amount of time to get your teams that you want into the SEC, right? So it's a win-win, in my opinion. Maybe it's not, and maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. I think that's a win-win. And on top of that, I still think that ESPN does see some value in the ACC. So my thinking is, yes, they want teams, the best brands out of the ACC into the SEC, and they know that they're going to have to forfeit probably 2 to 4 brands to the Big Ten as well. So what they need to do is they need to fend off the Big 12. That's the key for the ACC survival, in my opinion. Because when it comes down to it, I think they're going to lose brands to the SEC, and I think they're going to lose brands to the Big Ten. It's going to leave between 6 and 8 brands left in the ACC. If they can fend off the Big 12 and actually compete with the Big 12 and try to pick off from the Big 12, then if you're ESPN, that is a win-win, because you're keeping the ACC valuable and you're hurting your competition, because Fox has the Tier 1 rights with the Big 12. So you're directly affecting your competition. Do you think that's a scenario that's possible?
Well, the one problem with a school, let's say they pay the $500 million. Okay. Now, right now, the ACC is going to fluctuate. It's going to get up to 40 million here really quick, because I mean it keeps adding every
Right.
year, as you know. So let's use 40 million as the base, okay? And let's say the Big Ten makes 80 million, or the SEC makes 80 million, let's say. So you're going to make $40 million more coming to the SEC or the Big
Right.
Ten. But if I write you a check for $500 million, it's going to take 12 and a half years to pay that money back. Is that a good investment? You know what I mean?
No.
That's not a good investment. So I don't
see any team doing that.
Yeah, I don't see anybody wanting to reach out and spend, And the other thing, and Tony loves to say this, and I love Tony because Tony's the number guy.
Yes.
You're not gonna take and give up free money like that. Nobody's gonna do that. And like Tony says, if the grant of rights could be broken, guess what? Texas would be in the SEC today. Because if anybody's going to break a grant of rights, it's going to be Texas. With their egos and with their lawyers and with their money, they would have broke the Big 12. Because the Big 12 grant of rights and the ACC grant of rights, if you look at the two grant of rights, are worded word for word. I don't know which conference copied off the other conference, but one of the conference wrote it, and the other conference said, good idea, we're doing it. And
but
so
I do think the biggest difference between the ACC and the Big 12 is the Big 12 wouldn't be able to get a majority to get them broken. If it was Texas by themselves, that's not going to do anything.
Right, because you only got
count themselves as 8 votes, then we're going to break them. See, so I do think that the amount of teams needed to do that in the ACC are there. It's just the team. I think some of the teams, maybe even most of the teams, have a landing spot locked down, but not every single one of them. And I think that is what is getting figured out right now. Once all the teams needed to vote that grant of rights down has a landing spot nailed down for sure, whether it's the SEC or the Big Ten, I think that's when we'll see that vote happen.
And you know what also is hindering the vote? It's the team that hinders everything.
Notre Dame.
It's Notre Dame. Because the ACC still believes that there's a chance they could get them for football. And we all agree that if Notre Dame goes to the ACC for football, everything changes. That stabilizes the ACC, and I think
they would bring West Virginia in with Notre Dame if that were to happen.
Right, and I think the ACC still has its heart set on Notre Dame hates Michigan so much that they're going to come to the ACC. And in honesty, I don't see Notre Dame doing anything for at least 4 to 5 years. They're going to see what this new playoff, how does it really affect them? Okay, because I think we all can agree Notre Dame in a 12-team playoff is going to be in the playoffs 9 out of 10 years.
Yeah,
Notre Dame is going to be in the playoffs. So now we got to see.
They'd be close this year, if not in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, every year they're going to be close or they're going to get in. And so what is that first round bye really worth? And that's what it's going to come down to Notre Dame. Do they get their teeth kicked in the first round a couple times and say, you know what? Maybe we need that bye and we're going to go for the bye and we're going to go to a conference. But until somebody gets to Notre Dame and forces them to join a conference, I don't see it happening.
TJ Scott, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, do contracts mean anything to you guys? Absolutely. And in fact, clauses in those contracts mean a lot as well. So yes, contracts do mean something, and the clauses within those contracts mean something as well. But Notre Dame is the wild card, and if the ACC continues to have blind faith in Notre Dame, that could turn out to be their downfall, because if that hope never pans out, then they're waiting on nothing. And even if they do make it to 2036, then what? Then the teams are gone anyways.
Right.
So
here's the thing we never talked about. Here's the thing we never talked about. We did a really good show Saturday, and we explained to the Big 12 that people aren't going to the Big 12 from the Pac-12 because of academics.
Right.
Now, we all agree that the ACC has even better academics than the Pac-12.
Yeah,
but
comparable to the Big Ten. The only thing is they accepted Louisville.
Right, but think about this. That all changes when North Carolina leaves, when Duke leaves, when Virginia leaves. When all the big, they're taking the big academics. So, and I don't
even
have
Florida State.
What are the numbers going to look like with the remaining ACC versus the remaining Big 12? I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I do believe that when you start taking the big schools, I think the academics is then going to switch to the Big 12 as being a little bit better than the ACC, because the ACC is going to lose all their top brands.
Yeah, and it depends on how many teams they actually have left. My estimate is, after they lose those teams, it's going to be anywhere from 6 to 8 teams remaining, depending on if, the SEC and the Big Ten get 4 teams apiece. It depends on that number right there. And, with the Big 12, West Virginia is still one of the weaker academic schools. But I think West Virginia gets a black eye for that for no reason, because we're one of the best research institutions in the nation. And people don't understand why our academic score is so low. That's the number that everybody uses as the end-all be-all, the academic score. And they look at West Virginia's academic score in the 200s, and they're like, that's a bad school. You're not understanding why that number is in the 200s. It's because West Virginia has a mission statement to educate the entire state of West Virginia. And on top of that, we don't have a bunch of these sister schools that we can send these 2-year lower academic degrees to. We accept everybody, so everything counts towards that school. Most of these state flagship schools, they have at least half a dozen to a dozen, sister schools that they can send those 2-year degrees and the lower academics to, and therefore their academic score is going to be much higher because that doesn't count against them. So when people read an academic score, they need to understand what exactly they're reading.
Right. See, and Alabama takes a black eye because everybody teases me, well, Alabama don't do any research. We do 110 million a year. And it's like, that's true. But how much does University of Alabama Birmingham make? That's our sister school. That's where all of our doctors go to. How much does Alabama Huntsville? That's our rocket scientist. How much research is done? So if you add all of our schools together, we do $965 million in research, which is really good. But we don't get credit for it because everybody just looks up Alabama and doesn't think about our other schools, And like you said, the problem with West Virginia is your school cares. Your school wants to educate the people of Appalachia, which is a great thing. And they give chances to students that wouldn't get a chance. So, you're doing good, and people don't take that in consideration.
Yeah, exactly right. So, and I'm going to make a video on this as well. In the future, I'm not talking about immediately. I'm talking about 5 to 10 years from now. We're talking, we've talked about what teams can go from the Big 12 to the Pac-12, from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, Big 12 ACC, ACC Big 12, the whole round robin. What about teams, that are in a Power 5 conference right now that could end up in a Group of 5 conference? I think the biggest chance of that happening would be with the ACC and it dissolving, and then there not being enough members left over from that dissolving because all these members have a place to land, and you got like 2 or 3 teams left, and they go somewhere. Who do you think has the biggest chance of actually getting demoted from Power 5 to Group of 5?
Well, I think it'd be the ACC, because think about this for a minute. And Louisville kind of spreads out a little bit, but if you look at the true path of the ACC, if you lose the big teams, what schools are in their path that could be promoted? You got like in East Carolina, which, they're decent in that, but, and you got Memphis, which is close to Louisville, but there's really nobody to promote. Where like the Big 12, you still got Tulane, you got Memphis, you just went out west, so you could go with Boise. You could,
you're in the middle of the country, so you can go east or west.
Exactly, where the ACC is kind of locked in. And unfortunately, with the ACC is, who are they surrounded by? The Big Ten and the SEC. So if there were good schools to promote, guess who would be taking them? So that's the problem with the ACC. And I think, honestly, if it did come down to a 4-conference super conference, you're going to look at the Big Ten. And even though they just added USC and UCLA, you would consider them more the Northeast. And then you'd put, SEC, the Southeast. You'd have the Big 12 in the middle, and then you got the West Coast with the Pac-12. That makes more sense than having three conferences, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the SEC, and then the Big 12, with most of the schools on the, east side of the Mississippi. So I think that's why you see the ACC, unfortunately, the grant of rights keeps them together longer, but the grant of rights also hinders them from really doing anything.
Yeah, exactly right. I think the biggest mistake that the ACC made that they're realizing right now is taking Boston College. But people have to realize whenever the ACC did take Boston College, it was right when they were really, really good under Matt Ryan. I think they jumped all the way up to number 2 in the nation that year, and it seemed like their football brand was really, really good. I still, even as good as Boston College was and as good of a quarterback as Matt Ryan was, I still don't think the ACC did their due homework as far as the actual fan base of Boston College. I think that the ACC thought that bringing in Boston College was going to get the eyeballs of Boston College. What they didn't realize is that was basically a pro football town. They like the New England Patriots, the Boston Celtics, the Boston Bruins, the Boston Red Sox. That is a pro sports town. Even when Boston College is good, it still doesn't bring in the eyeballs. And I know the TV sets are worth more per TV set up there, but for as many eyeballs as you're getting, I don't think it ever made up that value. And especially now when Boston College is terrible, I think they're really, kicking themselves in the rear and saying, man, why didn't we take West Virginia over Boston College?
Right. Well, I think the thing that helped Boston College is the academics part.
Of course.
The academics, because they got in 2021, they had $3.83 billion in endowments.
Yep.
So, I mean, they make money plus the research money that they made. That's why Boston College was allowed in. It was more for the academics than it was. But yeah, I mean, Boston College, it's kind of like Rutgers, everybody said, and Rutgers really is the bottom of the barrel for the Big Ten academic wise even. Yeah. But people said, well, they got Rutgers because of New York. I'm sorry to tell you, but New York is kind of like LA. Los Angeles will watch UCLA and USC when they're winning. But if they're not winning, USC has their fan base, but it's not a huge percentage of LA. Right. You know what I mean?
UCLA is even smaller.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Rutgers, people in New York don't watch football like they do basketball. It's more of a basketball city than it is a football city, college-wise, I mean, that's because of all the Big XII teams that were around it. And, they care a lot more about basketball than they do football.
Yep. Just ask St. John's fans. I mean, it's crazy over there.
Exactly.
They can feel Madison Square Garden with St. John's fans. It's great. And just to realize how small the school is, that shouldn't happen. It really should not be happening at all. But for the Big 12, no, let me go back. For the ACC, whenever I bring up the Louisville argument, the thing that always gets thrown in my face is, well, the ACC just lost Maryland, so they were just trying to fill in a spot, so Louisville filled that spot. To me, that's a really weak argument because they used the academic argument against West Virginia, but then when it comes to Louisville, it was, Maryland left and we had to fill that spot.
Right.
Do you think that's a weak argument, or do you kind of understand what they're saying?
The problem is they needed to fill the spot, and I understand that because at the time, everybody's with divisions. There was no unequal like there is today. Right. But there was at least 3 or 4 other schools I would have made a call to before I would have called Louisville.
Right.
Now I'm not saying Louisville was a terrible pick. I'm just saying that Louisville.
And we're not saying Louisville is a bad brand. We're saying based on we're sticking to our academics, Louisville didn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, academic-wise, it wouldn't have been your first call.
Yeah, exactly.
There's other, and one thing a lot of people aren't thinking, and we brought this up also. I understand the argument everybody in your chat's going to say, and everybody in the sports world is going to say when I mention this, but UConn would be a good pickup. Now I know the football team has sucked, okay, and I understand your argument. Their team has sucked, but they're really good academics. They are trying at football now. They're putting money into football, trying to get better. They're a great basketball team.
Good hire at head coach. They got to a bowl game this year.
Exactly. So I mean, UConn is probably 4 to 6 years away from their real potential where they could be,
Yes.
So grabbing them now wouldn't be a bad deal.
Well, I think the Big 12 needs to grab UConn for sure because we hear that they're going after Gonzaga, and that's a big get. That's going to make the Big 12, without a doubt, the unquestioned elite basketball conference in the entire nation. But in order to balance it out, they also need to grab UConn. Even if UConn wants to stay independent in football, that's fine. As long as you can pick up UConn in basketball, you're balancing out the Big 12 and you're adding just another very valuable brand in basketball. That's my one fear about the Big 12 is getting uneven, because if I was a fan of a team on the west side of the Big 12, I wouldn't be worried about it because I'd be on the west side of the Big 12. Who cares? Not much traveling at all. But if you're a fan on the east side of the Big 12, that's a big time worry. If you're seeing the Big 12 only be interested in teams on the west side, that you're like, wait a minute, how does that help us? That hurts us, Right. So I just want to make sure. I'm not saying that I'm against the Big 12 going after teams on the west side. I just want to make sure that it's balanced out.
Right.
That's all I'm saying with the Big 12.
And that's the huge thing with Gonzaga. You grab Gonzaga, now you have a traveling partner with BYU.
Washington.
I mean, when West Virginia has to go take their baseball team over there, or their basketball team, Wednesday you play Gonzaga in basketball, and then you just stick around, and Saturday you play BYU, and then you come home. It cuts your travel, expense.
Yeah.
And that's
hopefully they would set up our schedule like that,
Exactly. And that's how they should do it to help you guys, because I mean, that's the problem with BYU. I mean, think when BYU, who wants to play UCF? I mean, if you're BYU or you're Kansas, you don't want to fly all the way to UCF, because now what's the closest school again? Now you're going to go back to probably Houston.
Listen, this is not a popular opinion, but that is the exact reason why I don't think it would be a terrible idea for the Big 12 to pick up USF. Okay? I know they haven't existed for very long in college football, but they have played in a, quote, Power 5 league in the Big East. They got up to the number 2 ranking after beating West Virginia in 2007. So they have some experience, and they're about to build a great football stadium. The TV market's there. You'd give UCF a travel partner. Do you think that would make any sense, or is the lower brand not worth the trouble?
No, I like USF, and if you look at the academic, if you look at all the numbers are there. I mean, they are. Yeah. I think the problem is, I don't know if the Big 12 is waiting to see what happens to Miami.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because we know Miami.
Honestly, I don't think the Big 12 has a shot at Miami, because here's what I think is going to happen. I think Florida State is pursuing AAU status. Florida State does not want to go to the SEC. Bunch of bad blood between them and the SEC. They straight up chose the ACC over the SEC back in 1991. So I think Florida State wants to go to the Big Ten, and ergo, the SEC will get Miami Hurricanes. So is there a chance? Maybe, if the exact things happen, but not the right amount of teams as far as teams in the ACC exist for the Big 12. Because let's face it, in the pecking order, when the ACC does get picked apart, it's going to be either or, Big 10, SEC, whatever order, and then third place is going to be the Big 12. I mean, that's just how it is. We're not going to be able, the Big 12 is not going to be able to outbid the SEC or the Big 10. And since there's only 2 teams in Miami for the ACC, then that's why you start looking at a USF. FAU, I think, is just a notch below that. I don't think you pursue FAU unless you get really, really desperate. I think USF would be the first choice.
Right. And the other thing, people will be asking probably, because, again, you're talking to sports people. You're not talking to academics and this and that. But, people tell me all the time, well, why would Miami or Florida State rather go to the Big Ten than the SEC? Somewhere between $100 and $150 million a year more in research money. Yeah. We're not talking sports now. We're talking academics. And, Tony likes to make fun of me because I do the oh shucks, the SEC sucks, but we're not that bad as far as academics. No. But the problem is we're not the Big Ten, and you go to the Big Ten and you're looking at $100 to $150 million a year more academically, and that's why a team would choose the Big Ten over the SEC, and I don't blame them, because that's what the presidents care about.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but what happens if and we're going to find this out probably in 4 or 5 years, but nobody knows the real number. Is 16 the best number for a league? Is 18? Is 20? Is 22 too big? We don't know. And I think that's why you see nobody's going to move right now, because the SEC wants to see bringing Texas and Oklahoma. What does that do?
Right.
How does that play out? In the Big Ten, they want USC and UCLA to settle in. How does that play out? And then what is the real numbers? Okay. We all know that the Big Ten will change their mind tomorrow if Notre Dame says yes. But other than that, they want to check everything out, which makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that too. Tim Prangley made a good point earlier when we were talking about USC not grabbing, the majority of LA, even though they get, a lot of fans, because LA's a big market. So even just getting, 20% of that, that's a lot of fans.
Oh, yeah.
But he made a good point. We forget that USC fans they have alumni all over the nation. Sometimes their alumni can outnumber local fan bases of local teams. Like whenever USC goes to Notre Dame, they have a massive alumni up there. So a road game is not as bad whenever they go to Notre Dame. So I think that's one thing that the Big Ten looked at whenever they brought in UCLA and USC, among all the other things. Do you think one of the hopes, not the only, not this is make or break. If we don't get Notre Dame, then we don't want them. But maybe one of the hopes is, hey, if we bring in USC, maybe Notre Dame will think about the Big Ten a little bit more.
It'll help. And also think about this. I mean, because like you just brought up and like Tim said, there are a lot of USC fans and alumni living in New York, living in, out there. So guess what? That's going to help Rutgers when they have to go to Rutgers. That's going to help, Maryland when they got to go to, USC has fans all over the world. I mean, it is a tremendous school. It is a great school. And they have a huge number of alumni.
Right.
And the other thing that helped the Big Ten get both USC and UCLA is, guess what? There's a huge number of Big Ten schools that have alumni in and around Los Angeles. So it goes the other way too. You got a lot of snowbirds who got tired of the cold up north, and they decided, to venture off to California. And there's a huge number of Big Ten alumni living in LA.
Right, exactly. But I do think eventually in the future, the Big Ten will add a couple more West teams to help with the travel issues of USC and UCLA. And this is why and this is not a popular opinion with Oregon and Washington fans, but this is why I don't think that Washington, Oregon will be in the Big Ten. Because I think the Big Ten would choose Cal and Stanford over Oregon and Washington, number one, because of academics and research. Number two, they are better for the schedules of UCLA and USC. They're in the state of California. They're not the toughest teams in the world to beat. So right. I think it helps USC and UCLA a little bit more than if they brought in Washington and Oregon. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and also, I mean, Stanford has won one national championship a year since 1976.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? So you bring Stanford. I mean, you're already bringing in USC and UCLA, which are championship machines. The California schools play a lot of sports that nobody else plays. I mean, they got their volleyball, they got their water polo. I mean, they got sports that other conferences don't have. So bringing in a Stanford is huge. And I mean, think about this. Not talking bad about Washington. Washington has a great academic school. USC is a great academic school. But everybody knows Stanford as the Harvard of the West. Okay? That's what they're called, the Harvard of the West.
Good too.
Yeah, so I mean, and then you look at Cal with all their nuclear money and all this and that, I mean, getting those two teams are going to benefit the Big Ten in a huge way. It's going to elevate them both in championships and sports, but also academic. I mean, when you can bring in Cal's library, you can bring in Stanford's library, you're doing well. And like Tony says, your mom and dad always told you who you associate with is what, people look at you as. So when you're associating with the top, academics, then it elevates the Iowas, the Purdues, the Rutgers, because now you're hobnobbing. You got Stanford in there, you got Cal in there, you just brought in USC and UCLA. It just elevates everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I saw a comment just a little bit ago that said, I think it was Alan Aaron actually, that said they want West Virginia in the ACC, but they think there's a better chance of West Virginia going to the SEC. I know we've talked about that before. Do you feel as strongly as you did before as far as the SEC pursuing West Virginia and Oklahoma State? I think it's a great fit. You're locking in Bedlam. And I think culturally, West Virginia might fit in the SEC culturally better than the ACC. I just like the rivalries that we have in the ACC, but culturally and geographically, West Virginia fits in just as good, if not better, in the SEC over the ACC. Do you think their chances are still good, or do you think it's going down?
No, I think it's good, and here's why. I don't see the SEC grabbing two more Florida schools. SEC is adamant that they don't want more than one team in a state, two at the most. Okay, so we already got Florida, so we're only going to take one. We're not going to take Georgia Tech. We do want Clemson. Yep. And now we're going to fight the Big Ten over Virginia, North Carolina, because those are the next two big ones. And North Carolina, thank God, the president likes to be associated with the South, so that kind of helps us. But guess what? They're more of a Big Ten school. They're going to make more money in the North, so I understand. But you look at a lot of the schools in the ACC, the SEC, we don't want Louisville. We don't want Pitt. We're not going up to Pitt. We don't want Boston College. We're not traveling to Boston College. So there's schools that are, just because of location, you're out of it. And then a good chunk of the schools we're going to fight the Big Ten for. So it lowers the number of teams we can actually get. And I would put West Virginia and Oklahoma 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there.
Okay. So maybe right on the line. And if you don't get another team that you're fighting for, they would fill that spot.
Yeah. What happens if we lose North Carolina? Then we would probably go for West Virginia, or I think, though, if we lose Virginia, I think we would sneak Virginia Tech. I think we want one of the Virginia Tech.
I think NC State could be in there, too.
NC State could be, Duke could be in there. If Duke's still of it, I think once you see the grant of rights, it'll kind of be like the NFL draft. You're going to see the SEC and the Big 10, fighting over. And unfortunately, being an SEC fan, I hate to say this, but I think the SEC will lose a little bit because of academics.
Yeah.
We are getting
I can agree with that. I will say this, even though West Virginia only has a 60,000 seat stadium, I think our atmosphere is more comparable to an SEC atmosphere than an ACC atmosphere. I will say that.
Well, keep in mind, Missouri is right around 70,000. So I mean, we added them. Everybody knows Vanderbilt's only 38,000. I mean, it's a small stadium.
Added them before they renovated Fairfield. They were only at like 62,000 when you actually added them, and they've expanded since. I think that's exactly what would happen with West Virginia. If West Virginia got added to the SEC, you would see a stadium expansion, and it would probably be at 70,000, just like Missouri.
Oh yeah, because I mean, you think if we added West Virginia this year, or when Texas comes, think about that. Your check is going to go up by about $35 to $40 million a year.
Oh yeah, and travel costs.
Yeah, plus the SEC travels. We're going to want to come to Morgantown. We're going to want to see games, and you guys sell out. So you guys know that if you add another 10 to 15,000 seats, you're still going to be sold out.
even if it's opposing fan bases.
Exactly. You don't care because the money's going to your school no matter
Right.
who's in those seats, and plus think about it. You want the SEC to come to you like we travel because guess what? Now your hotels go up, your restaurants go, we're going to bring money to you. And I'm not saying that the Big 12 don't travel, but Iowa State don't come to Morgantown that great. Kansas ain't coming to Morgantown that great.
I don't think the ACC travels that well. I don't. Not in football.
No, you got Miami will
Certain
travel
brands.
when
Certain
they're
brands.
winning.
Clemson. I think Florida State. Well, they've fallen off a little bit. For the most part, Florida State. I would say Louisville's okay. But, man, overall, I have to say no. Maybe NC State. I mean, Pitt doesn't travel well. Boston College doesn't travel hardly at all. Wake Forest,
We give Virginia Tech only
Duke,
because they're a rival.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech travels well when they're good.
Yeah. But that's
seriously,
Miami.
when you think about it, overall, the ACC does not travel well in football.
No.
They don't.
No, unless they're winning, but Clemson will. Clemson's the only one, But yeah, but look at the SEC. Alabama travels when we were 6 and 7, or when we're 5 and 7. We travel.
Look at South Carolina. I remember back in it was either 98, 99. South Carolina went 0 and 12, 0 and 12, over, sold out every game.
Yep.
That's loyalty right there. That is breathing, college football. And I think South Carolina has a really good coach, and they better watch out because Shane Beamer is going to be a hot commodity. They better back up the Brinks truck to keep him in Columbia. And I do think Shane Beamer wants to stay in Columbia, but they're going to have to pay him to stay there. He's building something. I'm telling you right now.
Well, I think the thing with Beamer is he's like his dad. He's loyal.
Yes.
And South Carolina gave him a chance. And since they gave him a chance, as long as the money is close, he'll stay there.
Right. Exactly.
And
Tim Prangley, hold on. Tim Prangley, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, payments for the USC endorsements. We did endorse USC quite a bit, didn't we? Like, I don't think we've patted USC that much on the back since I started the YouTube channel. So I think that's a fair payment. What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah.
Anybody else have a question or a comment, or you want to make fun of me? Hey, thick skin is part of the checklist, so throw in a troll comment. Best way to get your comment on the screen, like Tim Prangley's right there, is a super chat. It's a little dollar sign you see on the bottom right hand corner. Anything you put in that super chat is going to go on the screen, and it's a great way to donate and support the channel. And in the off season, we need those donations even more than in the regular season. So it's greatly appreciated to keep us going on a daily basis because, Jeff Grimm, do I or do I not do videos every single day?
Oh, at least one, if not two. You're always doing videos every day.
I did 3 today.
See?
Sometimes I get on a roll and I do multiple videos.
Yeah.
That's just how and that's the reason why I started a YouTube channel, because that's just how my brain has always worked. Even if it's something that that's really not going to happen. Doesn't matter. My brain doesn't stop in reality. It goes and says, well, what if this? What if that? And then conference realignment just kind of opened up the floodgates. Like,
and that's the thing.
I've probably done 500 by now. Not even going to lie. I've probably done 500 conference realignment videos by now.
Because you could do a conference realignment, we know San Diego State, we know SMU. They're pretty much going to go to the Pac-12, it looks like. But what about Fresno? Yeah. What about Tulane?
And with the Pac-12, think about going coast to coast.
Yeah. Does the Big 12 get nervous and say, you know what, Tulane's could be in play for the Pac-12 because they got SMU. Maybe we should go after, there's a lot that could happen. I do think, though, the Big 12 just needs to stand pat. I think they need to breathe. I think they need to bring in the 4 teams.
As long as, and I've been saying this for the past couple shows, as long as they get that grant of rights done, notarized, on the table, ready for everybody to sign, and get everybody to sign that thing, because from what I'm hearing, not everybody has signed that grant of rights. Could that be a sign of something could happen in the next few years?
See, and that's a question. Is the Big 12 nervous now? Because Houston hasn't signed. BYU, I wouldn't worry about.
And people were telling me that all 4 new members, in order to accept the invite, had to sign the grant of rights. The grant of rights were not ready when they got the invite. That's what people are not understanding. So Houston hasn't signed. There could be a few others that haven't signed. And if the SEC or the ACC, I don't think it's going to happen, but if they would come with the bigger offer, then they could be flipped just like that. So that's why I'm saying it is of the utmost important, before conference expansion, before anything else, get the grant of rights done and get everybody's signature on that grant of rights.
Because what about Houston?
That's a big TV
What if
market.
the Pac-12 calls you? I mean, you don't have to worry about BYU. The Pac-12 don't want BYU.
It's like the video that I did today. The three states that everybody's going to look at as far as conference expansion, conference realignment is California, Texas, and Florida. And not only Houston is in the state of Texas, but they have a massive TV market.
Right. And let's face it, Houston's right there with some great high school players from Louisiana. You know, I mean, you're right there where they go back, you know, and Louisiana is a hotbed, you know, so, but that's the problem. And I heard today, and again, you're going to hear nuggets, so I don't know how true it is, but the talk is today that the Pac-12, when they sign their grant of rights, it's going to be 10 years.
Oh.
So if they sign for 10 years, starting in 2024, they're not ready to be doing anything until 2034, 2 years before the ACC.
Honestly, if they're going for 10 years, then that tells me that they're going to try to get more teams. Because they're not. I don't think the Pac-12 is going to sign a 10 with just 12. I think they're going to want to sign a 10 with either 14 or 16. Honestly, I would think 16. If it's an extended, they're going to try to make it as solid as possible.
Right, and that was from Brent McMurphy. So I mean, he's an insider. So I mean, he's knowledgeable, and so, and again, I'm not saying that it's true. They haven't signed, but what I'm hearing is they're looking at possibly a 10-year grant of rights, which would be good for them. I mean, it'll stabilize them for 10 years.
That would be amazing. Yes.
And then what does the Big 12 do? Do they sign?
What? I actually believe that because you know what I think changed everything? I think playoff expansion is what changed everything. I think the Pac-12 was nervous, but then once that got passed and the teams were like, so you're telling me, even though we're down to 10, if we stay in the Pac-12, we're guaranteed to get in the playoffs, and it's going to be an easier path as long as we win the Pac-12. And who knows, maybe every once in a while the Pac-12 can get 2 teams in. Because the biggest knock that has been against the Pac-12 is how long has it been since they made the playoffs? It's been like 7-8 years, something like that, right? So with the playoff expansion, they are guaranteed. They will not miss. They are guaranteed to put at least one team in the playoffs. And I think that is what calmed everybody down. Because chronological order, USC and UCLA left for the Big Ten, and then playoff expansion was passed. Do you think – I know the Big Ten has a lot more money, but this is going to be a travel nightmare for USC and UCLA. Do you think that after the playoff expansion was passed that USC was like,
No, and here's the reason why. 2 reasons. One, and again, this is just a guess. I don't, we don't have the numbers in front. But I would say going from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten has to be at least $50 million in research money.
At least, yep.
And you just doubled your sports budget from the Pac-12, so they made the money. And let's be honest, USC shouldn't have a problem making the playoffs in the Big Ten. Well, they wouldn't.
It depends on if they screw them with the scheduling, like give them a road trip to Ohio State and to Michigan.
Right. But, I mean, that's your only problem is you got Michigan and Ohio State. So, I mean.
But even if you split those up and you have one road and one home, that's still doable.
Yeah, and you're only going to play them probably every other year. So maybe this year you play Michigan, next year you play Ohio State, because they're going to do some kind of 3-6-6. And think about this. We're talking to grant of rights. For the Pac-10, and I'm going to call them the 10 because there's only 10 teams right now, but for those 10 teams,
I agree.
A 10-year grant of rights really only hurts 2 teams. Washington, maybe Cal, and Stanford. Because those 3 teams have aspirations for the Big Ten. Let's face it, the Arizona schools, the state schools in Washington and Oregon, Colorado and Utah, they want to stay in the Pac-12. They want to keep it going. So, hey, they'll sign, and that's the thing with the ACC. We all say that it's a hindrance. But for the 7 teams that aren't your Florida State, your Clemson, your North Carolina, being locked in until 2036 just gives them the peace of mind that, hey, we're still going to get a paycheck at least for another 12 years. You know, so.
Hey, what about a rare pat on the back instead of a troll? Twisted Rooster with the $10 donation. Appreciate it, buddy. Says, great show, GBD and my man, Tide Guy. We didn't get trolled. We actually got complimented. How about that?
Twisted Rooster is a great guy.
And then Joey Foster, this looks like a little bit of trash talk. Joey Foster, thank you for the $3 donation. Says, Sunbelt, better than SEC. Ask Arkansas A&M.
You know what? I love that A&M got thumped.
A&M. You know what? I think A&M is going to surprise a lot of people this year. They still have a lot of talent over there, and they have a good offensive coordinator, and that was really their only knock. They had a good defense last year. They just didn't have the offense. I'm telling you, I think, and the schedule sets up nicely. They get Alabama at home. I think that's winnable. I think Texas A&M could be close to a 10-win team. I'm going to say 9-3 and finish second in the SEC West.
The only thing that'll stop A&M is the thing that stopped A&M for the last however many years. Quarterback.
Yeah.
They don't develop a quarterback. So if Bobby Petrino can develop a quarterback, they could do well. And that is Jimbo Fisher's problem. Everybody says, well, he's a great coach. No, he got lucky with Winston. If you take Winston off his teams, what has he accomplished?
Nothing.
You know, he's never had a great quarterback. His offense is
even the second year he had Winston, they got thumped by Oregon in the playoffs, didn't they?
Yep.
Yeah, so that shows that he digressed.
Yep.
He didn't even develop Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston got worse under Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, and so I mean Fisher. That's the problem with A&M. They need a quarterback. If they had a quarterback, they would do good.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, the excuse that I'm hearing from A&M fans and from a lot of SEC fans is that the offense, because Jimbo Fisher is actually an offensive guy. Crazy. A&M's good at defense, terrible on offense, but Jimbo Fisher's an offensive guy, right? But the argument or the excuse that I hear is that his offense is too complex for the quarterbacks. Then dumb it down.
Well, think about this.
Don't be trying to call an NFL offense on the college football level, because that's what it sounds like is going on in Texas A&M. When is he going to learn his lesson? Because his trip up has been the offense, and he's supposed to be an offensive guy. I don't understand that.
Well, and think about this. This will make you laugh too. Everybody considers Jimbo Fisher a great recruiter, right? So why aren't you recruiting a quarterback that can run your offense?
I don't know.
I mean, you're recruiting out there. Get the player who can run your offense.
Well, think about this. So last year they had the number one recruiting class, but still the weakness was quarterback.
Yeah.
How do you have the number one recruiting class and you don't have the best quarterback in the nation signed? You have freaking Zach Calzada. What? It's like he doesn't know how to read talent on the quarterback. Or is it he has so much faith in his offense that he's like, we'll focus on other positions and not the quarterback. But then that's what keeps biting him in the rear end. I can't figure out Jimbo Fisher. I can't.
Well, and think about this. Some of Alabama's best teams, our quarterback was Greg McElroy, not a great quarterback. A.J. McCarron, not a great quarterback. Who just won back-to-back national championships with a walk-on quarterback?
That'd be Georgia.
You know what I mean? You don't need a five-star quarterback. You just need a quarterback who can run your offense. And if you're not out there recruiting that player, you know, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, Tua came in the second half and won us a national championship, but when he was leading the way, we didn't win one.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Bryce Young, great quarterback. He didn't win one. You know, so I mean, just because you got a great quarterback don't mean it. All Texas A&M, they don't need a great quarterback. They just need an adept quarterback, a top 50 quarterback. You know, kind of like Iowa. If Iowa had just a top 50 offense, they would have been somewhere. Yeah, and that's where Texas A&M is. They don't need a great quarterback. They just need a decent quarterback.
And then on top of that, their second string at A&M is such a massive fall off. It's like if that starter goes down, there's no hope. You're not winning another football game. Speaking of Texas A&M, and I've touched on this briefly, but you might disagree with me on this one, but I think in the next 5 to 10 years that there's a decent chance that Texas A&M could jump to the Big Ten. because of Texas. The one reason why the SEC did not tell Texas A&M that Texas was coming to the SEC until it was vote time is because they knew how much they didn't want Texas. One of the main reasons why Texas A&M went from the Big 12 to the SEC was because of Texas. Texas A&M does have AAU status. There's no buyout in the SEC, and the money's going to be about the same. What do you think the chances are?
The only downfall to that, and like I just touched on, if they go to the Big Ten, they're going to make more money academic-wise. I mean, there's no lie about that. But my only problem, Texas A&M is clear down there by Houston.
Yep.
So when they have to travel to Rutgers, they have to travel to Penn State. That's a distance. Plus, here's the other question.
Even USC.
Does Texas A&M, which has a huge advantage right now, even over Texas, because they've been in the SEC longer, does Texas A&M want to run the risk of losing recruits? Because you know what? I don't want my kid to play at A&M because he's in the Big Ten, and I can't travel to watch him play road games to Rutgers, to Penn State, to Wisconsin, to Minnesota. You know, do I want to see my kid play in November in the big house or outside at Wisconsin or Iowa in a snowstorm? Or do I want to watch him play at Alabama, LSU? You know what I'm saying? So that would be my only question is, would it hurt them recruiting-wise? It'll benefit them academic-wise. We all know that the sports money is going to be, within a few $1 million here or there.
Yep.
The question is recruiting. And I truly think that the people who matter with A&M, even though they hate Texas, they have an advantage over Texas, and they got better players right now than Texas. And if Texas were to come in, if Texas was to enter the SEC in the last 5 years, would Texas even have beat A&M one of the last 5 years? Well, this year, yeah. I mean, obviously
this year, yeah.
But the 5 years prior, I mean, look what Texas A&M has become because they came to the SEC.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do think that they downgraded in coach from Kevin Sumlin to Jimbo Fisher because at this point in Jimbo's career at Texas A&M, Kevin Sumlin actually had more wins at Texas A&M.
Think about this. If you put Bobby Petrino as the coach and just made Jimbo Fisher the recruiter, you got a great team. But I don't have faith in Jimbo's coaching is the problem. I don't have faith in his coaching.
I think Texas A&M fans are starting to get antsy, to be honest with you. But his buyout is King Midas, basically.
Yeah, that's his only saving grace was $85 million buyout.
Yeah. Well, every year it does go down because the rest of his contract goes down. But we're at the point to where it's still ridiculous. You might as well. Yeah,
after next year, it's $76 million. So I mean,
if I were A&M, I would get out at least 2 more years. Try.
Well, what I really thought was going to happen, and it didn't happen, and I said this would happen, and I thought it would. There was a video, I don't know if you saw, of a Texas A&M coach that told the recruits, look up there, all those names up there, those are who are paying you to come. I thought they would say, you know what, NCAA, we committed a recruiting violation.
Didn't Nick Saban use that in one of his pressers?
Oh, yeah, he used that. But if Texas A&M would have said, you know what, we committed a major recruiting violation, we're going to self-impose, we're not going to a bowl this year. They lost anyway. They wouldn't have went to a bowl anyway.
Yep.
Okay, Jimbo, you committed a big no-no, so we can fire you now with cause, and we don't have to pay you the buyout. That's what I think was going to happen.
Man, they could have used that to get the fire with cause. Wow, I didn't even think that would have to be a recruiting violation too. Just those words, using those words.
Oh yeah, you know what I mean. They had it on video where they showed the NCAA, and like I said, they didn't go to a bowl game last year, so you self-impose like Tennessee did with Jeremy Pruitt. Remember, they self-imposed it, and the NCAA was fine with it. Texas A&M could have done the same thing and got rid of Fisher and not owed him a penny.
I will say this: there's still time. There's still time.
There's still time.
I'm telling you, if you're A&M and you're not using that, I mean, either you do have confidence that he's going to get you back on the rails, or you're just dumb. Because there it was on a silver platter, your chance to fire him with cause and to move on. So Only the A&M upper officials know what they're thinking. I'll leave that up to them. But man, doesn't feel like we've been talking for an hour, but we have.
Oh
How
wow.
crazy
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah, it
Been
doesn't seem
another
like
good.
it at all.
Hey, this past week has been great. And I'm not gonna lie and say it's not tough in the off season and it's still a struggle to get views because it is. But this past week has been absolutely amazing for Golden Blue Dude. People have shown up for the live shows. The super chats are rolling in. The views for the regular videos. I mean, we're having a great week, and I'm I very much appreciate everybody that does that because it's not like I can go back and watch my own video 10,000 times. That's not how it works. So appreciate everybody that does that. Anyways, we'll try to have Tide Guy on here on another live show, but just in case you don't know, Tide Guy does have his own YouTube channel. Tell him about it, buddy.
I do. I kind of changed mine because there's so much sports talk. So every Tuesday night I do sports trivia, and have a lot of the people you see in the chat room play. And then on Thursday night, we like to show how smart everybody is. And I have a whole bunch of different Trivial Pursuit games. So we play Trivial Pursuit. So we kind of make fun of everybody on how smart we are and how dumb we are. And like I said, if you guys are interested, come over.
Yep.
If you get 0 out of 6 on a card, don't feel bad. We've had many people do it. Even smart people get 0 for 6 sometimes. And
sometimes, especially when you get older. Before you get out of here, I want to mention a comment, and I've talked about this for a minute. Jesse Williams said USC should have played Washington in the Pac-12 championship. I agree with that, except the one thing is they lost to Arizona State, which kind of knocked them out of that. If Washington, listen, a lot of people want to blame USC for losing to Utah. A lot of people want to blame Utah for losing to teams they shouldn't, but then beating USC. Some of the blame goes on Washington because if they beat Arizona State, you're looking at a one-loss USC versus a one-loss Washington. Winner gets into the playoffs. So in case people don't realize that, think about that on the way out, guys. Pac-12 should have been in the playoffs. Part of the reason is Washington. I do think Washington will be a contender again this year. I think they could win the Pac-12 championship. It might be USC and Washington this year. But anyways, man,
Pac-12 will be good this year. They're going to be a really good conference this year.
They were a great conference. They just didn't make the playoffs. They had 5 teams. 5 finished with 10-win seasons.
Yep.
That is a good conference right there, guys. So hopefully I want to see the Pac-12 back in the playoffs. I know we're guaranteed to see them because of playoff expansion. Can't wait for that. But I'm hoping that they can make it to the playoffs before even that happens because to me, it really does feel like the playoffs have been missing something since the Pac-12 hasn't been making it.
Well, and think about this, Golden Blue Dude. USC needs to make the playoffs this year. This is their last chance to make the playoffs for the Pac-12.
Yep.
And that would be a hell of a way to go out. If you're leaving the Pac-12, that's how you want to go out. We made the playoffs.
There you go. Exactly right. Well, as always, man, this was a great show. A lot of success. Appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
I did too. Have a good night, buddy.
All right. Bye.
Remember, guys, on the way out, make sure to hit the like button. If you're watching the replay, make sure to hit the like button. That's what helps these videos the most. Appreciate everybody stopping by, all the comments, all the super chats. You guys are the engine that keeps Golden Blue Dude running. I'm just the mouth that goes blah, 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 and the face that you see on the screen. But you guys are the engine. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It does help with the YouTube algorithm. And who knows, maybe you'll actually enjoy the content as well. And if you don't, you can always unsubscribe. It's as simple as that. But as for tonight, that's our show. That's our show, guys. I tried to rhyme, but it didn't work. That's our show, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you come back and enjoy some more shows. Tomorrow, more videos, of course. But for tonight, we're done. Golden Blue Dude is out.